Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven. We're on day 2 of Advent this year, and I am joined by the Creepy Fox. He has been on my channel before, and I'm glad to have him back. Y'all, please go show him some love. Let's get into these stories. Story 1. So, at the beginning of October last year, my first cousin, once removed, passed away from a seizure alone. She hadn't told anyone that she was having seizures, so it was very sudden. A couple of days after she had passed away, one night around 3:10 a.m., I woke up to my dog growling. I'm a very light sleeper, so I wake up fairly quickly, and I'm pretty aware of my surroundings. But she was growling at my closed bedroom door, which over a foot from the headboard of my bed. So immediately I was in fear that someone was there. I have younger siblings who sometimes come up to my door to tell me something, but at that time of night, everyone is usually asleep. I did that thought process very quickly. In a couple of seconds after waking and shortly after, I heard these loud footsteps walking towards my door. Whatever made the sound was wearing boots of some kind. My dog was on the edge of the bed, inching closer to the door, ready to jump on whoever came in. As scared as I was, I hid under my blanket only to hear the footsteps stop once they reached my door. I waited a couple of minutes before getting up, opening the door expecting to see nothing, but I was afraid that I might. Story 2. So on the 27th of June, my uncle passed away at early hours in the morning due to a sudden big heart attack. It took a few days for me to process what happened, etc., and I felt the same feeling of when my friend visits me. I could feel him there. When my friend died, I felt her anger and how upset she was, and I felt scared. But with my uncle, it feels different, almost peaceful. Anyways, back to the story. I was struggling with life and asked for a sign. Then a few days later, my uncle visited me and told me, "I'm okay, please tell everyone that." Then my grandmother told me just 2 days ago that she woke up around 3 to 4 a.m. and felt his presence immediately. She then went downstairs to make coffee and saw a dark figure in the shape of my uncle standing in the lounge room doorway. She said she knew it was him, so she turned her back to continue making her coffee, and she felt him wrap his arms around her, and he told her that he is okay, which is exactly what he said to me. My dad has also said that he was walking in the cemetery a few days ago and said he saw my uncle, but then he looked back and it was just a random man. Hope this interests someone. It warms my heart thinking back on it. My dad also seen him in the cemetery when he went for a walk. My grandmother also feels his presence every morning when she wakes up. And I feel him a lot too, and anytime I ask for a sign from him, the time is always 444. Story 3. Hi all. This happened in 2004 when my dad died. My husband, kids, and I had just got back from the hospital saying goodbye to my dad. He hadn't officially died when we left, but we couldn't stay because the kids were young and my husband couldn't take any more time off from work. My mother and sister stayed with him. Anyway, we just got home and went into the bathroom and saw a towel and some clothes on the floor. I bent over to pick it up and suddenly felt someone whack my butt hard. Hard enough that I heard the crack and bumped my head into the corner of the sink. I ran out of the bathroom screaming at my husband because I thought he snuck up behind me and did it. He quite vigorously denied when he was at the other end of the house. Not 60 seconds after I yelled at him, the phone rang. It was my sister calling to let me know my dad had passed away 5 minutes ago. Now, when I was growing up, my dad was very insistent on well-brought-up young ladies, did not bend over like a common slut. I had to kneel down with my spine straight to pick up things off the floor. I haven't been able to do that for a long time. Anyway, I bent over in the wrong way and I got whacked on the butt. That stopped one day when absently minded whacked my mother. I had a lump on my head as proof and I looked for bruises because it was hard enough to shove me into the sink. I don't think my dad meant to knock my head into the sink. I think he wanted to do something that only a few people knew what it was. story number 4.
This happened back when I was 12 years old, and I was living in my hometown in Malaysia. It was school holidays. My parents had decided our family would be staying at a grandparent's house for a week. Speaking of my grandparents, their house is located 40 minutes from the city. It is built in a small town in a rural suburb, which consists of 3 other neighbors which live close by. The nearest town from their house is another 10-minute drive out of the dense tropical environment, which also means the entire suburb will be pitch black after the sun sets, and that is between 5:30 to 6 p.m. The best thing about this time of the hour is the quiet and peacefulness of the atmosphere, which is also combined with the faint cricketing noise in the background. Meanwhile, I get myself lost gazing at the starry sky surrounding the full moon. There are 4 rooms in my grandparents' house. The maid's room, grandparents' room, great-grandma's room, as well as my parents' room. My grandma was 97 at the time, so she moved to the city with my uncle, who had 3 maids to take care of her. This meant my younger brother Andy would be staying with me in great-grandma's room, since we do not want to share a room with our parents. Everything went well until our second to last day. My parents attended a friend's wedding in the city, therefore they won't be coming home. It's due to heavy alcohol consumption from the celebration. It was already 9:30 p.m. My grandparents and the maid had already gone to bed. Only Andy and I were chilling in the living room. He was playing his Game Boy Color in front of the TV. Meanwhile, I am reading comics at the very back of the room, with the window slightly open to enjoy the cool breeze. It's very humid in Malaysia, especially indoors. All of a sudden, I could feel a distinct change in the motion of the breeze. It no longer felt the same cool inward flow, but rather like a very cold hand gently brushing up and down from my neck to the top of my head. My entire body instantly reacted with goosebumps, and it's those kind of goosebumps you know that something is not right. I try to play it cool and not to freak out. I pretended not to notice anything for another 5 minutes or so. My dad once told me if you show your fear, it will notice, and it will continue to bother you in the process. The brushing continued as I endured and trusted myself that was the longest 5 minutes of my life. I slowly stood up. I didn't turn my back to look behind. I shook off my goosebumps and I said, "Andy, bedtime, let's go." He instantly agreed, not because he noticed, but he was always afraid to be alone downstairs. We went upstairs, brushed our teeth, and then it's lights out. I remember waking up very suddenly from my sleep, and I was feeling wide awake for no apparent reason. I could not see very well as it was still dark, so I assume it's around 3 a.m. or so. While trying to go back to sleep, I heard a very faint meowing in the room, and I could instantly tell the difference. It's not from a cat, but man-made from a female. So confused, I quickly turned to Andy to find him facing me sound asleep. The meowing gradually grew louder, and its tone became much more sinister, until it was next to my ear. My mind remained calm, however. My eyes began tearing up, and my entire body was shaking in absolute horror, which I no longer have control over, as if I was completely paralyzed. Minutes felt like hours, until my body has finally calmed down, and the feeling of dread and horror slowly lingered away. I could feel an internal calm in the room. However, I couldn't bring myself back to sleep after what happened. To feel safe, I sat upright and I positioned my back against the corner of the wall, meanwhile watching Andy sleeping peacefully until daybreak. When first light entered the room, I immediately woke up Andy to get him out of the room with me. Although I received a couple of grouchy punches and kicks, it was worth it, as I don't feel safe for him to be in there alone. I didn't want to worry the whole family while seeking for an answer. So I approached my maid and told her no matter what, Do not share with anyone about what I'm about to tell you. Feeling excited, she hurried her promise, and I told her what happened. My maid's expression immediately turned sour and hesitated to explain. However, I begged her because I really needed the closure. Eventually, she caved and appeared regretful for telling me. The culprit was a pontiac. It's a female vampiric ghost in Malay mythology, and they prey on men. Pontiac usually arises at full moon and announces her presence through high-pitched cries. If the cry is soft, it means that the Pontiac is near, and if it is loud, then she must be far. I almost fainted right after hearing it. Anyway, to this day, I still get goosebumps every time I retell this horrific experience.
All right, y'all, this was a short one. I got to collect a little more stories, but I will see y'all tomorrow with another guest narrator. I love y'all so much. Remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through